Sports Comic News, episode 104. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, alongside Mike. The Mike.
I get it, like microphone or something.
That's all I got.
Nice. Welcome to the show today. We do have an interview with Tom McWeeney. And if you're thinking, is this? Yes, it is. The Tom McWeeney who's done Image, Dark Horse, DC, Marvel, lots of different stuff. He is an artist, inker, and he's doing the art for a book we'll be talking about a little later. Yeah.
Strap in, because he can talk, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I can sit there and listen to this guy for, like, I wish, like, about halfway through the interview while we're sitting there listening to all his stories, I was kind of like, man, we should have told him ahead of time this is going to be, like, part 1 of 4 or something, so we could just get it all, we could get everything on the show, so we'll have to have him back for sure. And with that, we're going to jump right into the news, because you really don't care how Chris and I are doing, so. TV news. I'm not caught up on The Flash. I know that it's back on TV. Are you caught up on it?
Didn't even realize it was back until the other day.
Yeah, so that's a negative. I'm almost done with The Punisher. The Punisher's been really good. But now I've slowed down on everything because this weekend, Kingdom was released on Netflix, which is a 6-episode first season. I'm on episode 5 as we speak. It's a story about like this dynasty in China that it's olden times, but it's also like a zombie story as well. So it's kind of political that everyone thinks the king is either alive or dead, the current king, and they kind of, to prolong his life, they turn him into a zombie. And so technically, I guess he's still alive. I don't know. But along with that, there's a lot of repercussions that are trickling through the land. So it's like a zombie story, but it also mixed with like the politics of, okay, the current king has a firstborn son, but the king also is going to have a son with another wife, so he might be more of an heir to the throne. So there's all this like political dealings going on. As well as it's a zombie story, and the zombies are really interesting. It's a new take on the lore of it. I don't want to get in, I'm not going to spoil too much about the show, but the zombies do only come out at night, which is pretty cool. It creates this really creepy thing that happens during the day. Is like you'll be walking through an area and the zombies avoid light, so before they basically die for the daylight part of the day, they'll go like bury themselves like under rocks and like under homes and stuff, like away from the sunlight. So you'll just see a bunch of like bodies crammed in like crawl spaces. And like when it hits nighttime, they come back to life, and it's really creepy. It's I love this stuff. I love the old school sword fighting and all that. I just eat all that up. It's really good.
That's intense.
Yeah, you're gonna love it. It's like you cannot wait to watch. I can tell.
I've watched one episode of Punisher. I really enjoyed the one episode.
Yep.
But I've gotten really into the show called The Bundy Tapes.
Oh, I saw that as well. Netflix just killing it, man.
Yeah, and it's half telling the story of Ted Bundy and half about these reporters who went and met with Ted, and basically what happened there was somebody got him to start talking about the murders, and so part of it is him just discussing about these murders in the third person. It's chilling and insane, and it's exactly the type of
so creepy. I love. Very creepy. Yeah, I don't even know if I could watch it just because I like people that don't. I mean, we're not a murder podcast. There are a lot of them out there, but. I mean, one of the creepy things about Ted Bundy is like sometimes serial killers look crazy. This guy he was just a normal dude, and he was like, I'm pretty sure he was running for like political office or was about to run for like mayor of the town because everybody liked this dude. You know what I mean? That was the scary part about him.
I'll tell one quick story, but there's so he was working in politics at the time.
Yep.
He actually, right before starting his spree, worked with this town in Washington on their rape and murder investigations.
Wow.
And how they function, how to make them function better. So he learned a lot about how things worked in the area. And that's why for the first chunk of his quote-unquote career, they all take place in that area. And you'll see he goes to different counties because he knows that none of them talk to each other, so they can't really connect dots.
Holy crap.
It's fucking insane.
That is scary.
Highly recommend it if you like that kind of stuff.
All right. And if you don't want to sleep at night. TV news. Okay, so we got a first look at John Cryer as Lex Luthor. I know he brought this up before. Hey, he looks like Lex Luthor, and it looks like he's keeping the facial hair, which is
looks like bald John Cryer.
Yeah, looks like a bald John Cryer. We got an Umbrella Academy trailer. We all know Netflix picked up Gerard Way from The Used. He wrote a comic called very, very popular comic called Umbrella Academy. Netflix picked it up, released the trailer, and it looks really fun. I cannot wait for this show. I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, I was very critical of the book for the longest time when I was reading it.
Yeah.
And then I read it and realized how great it was. That being said, I really look forward to the show because it looks a lot like the comic.
Yep.
In a live-action sense. Obviously, there's some things that aren't shown that I don't know if they're going to do or not, but I saw a talking monkey, so I'm in.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it. And it was it wasn't just talking monkey. It was here's a casual talking monkey, and it's I don't know, the casualness of it was just kind of wow. Oh, all right. They're just doing it. Okay. I've never read it, but now it really makes me want to read Umbrella Academy.
I really recommend it.
We got a new trailer from The Boys coming this summer to Amazon Prime. One of the reasons I'm still purchasing Amazon Prime. But this trailer is a little different. I mean, we're getting some different characters. I don't know if they've changed actors, but I'm really excited because Carl Urban is in this trailer. And we all know how big of a nerd Carl Urban is. I mean, this guy, he was Judge Dredd. He's part of the Enterprise flight crew. I mean, he was Bones, and now he's part of The Boys. So this guy definitely, he's got his pop culture, at least in the comic books, that's locked down. I mean, it looks great. The show, it's copy paste, the costumes, and all the messed up parts of that book to come along with it. It seems like.
Yeah, and it really shows the tone of the show too. It's very hardcore and brutal.
Yep.
And a lot of blood and fight and cursing, and that's exactly what The Boys is.
Yeah. Movie news. So Black Panther received 7 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. And man, was the internet pissed. I did actually see this week when they announced the nominations. I mean, let's be real here. A lot of Marvel fans will agree that Black Panther was probably not the best picture this year. And also a lot of fans will agree the viewership will go up at the Oscars if you nominate it for 7 different nominations. Do you think this is just a grab for more viewers at the Oscars? I think it is. I'm not going to be watching the Oscars either way, but
I think it's politically motivated.
Oh, for sure.
Far into that.
Yeah.
This is the first superhero movie to be nominated since Dark Knight.
Right.
And that's a big deal. And it's the first Marvel movie to be nominated. Now, is it the best Marvel movie? No. Was it the best Marvel movie last year? In my opinion, no. It's still a really good movie, and I'm just glad to see something that I actually watched in the Best Picture nomination.
It's so true, yeah.
So, yeah, there's motivations there that I may or may not agree with, but at the end of the day, it's nice to see that they're actually reaching towards movies that we watch and not just kind of these Oscar bait movies that
right.
Some of them I do enjoy, I'm not going to lie.
Right.
But it's tough when you constantly put those up for an award and you don't put the ones that people actually watch.
Yeah. I agree. Spider-Verse is nominated for Best Animated Feature. That's one I agree with because that's what I hear from everyone everywhere is that movie is amazing.
Yeah, I'm still really mad I haven't seen it.
Me too.
I'm glad to see it get the praise. So.
Reborn is being made by Netflix with Chris McKay to direct it and Sandra Bullock to produce. We've been seeing her. There was all that stuff about Bird Box being like splattered all over the internet of like, I've never seen so much marketing for a movie. And now we got Sandra Bullock producing, potentially starring in this. So I wonder if she's got something going on where she's got a deal with Netflix. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and I don't know if Sandra Bullock's getting a lot of calls from Hollywood.
That's true. I don't know. I mean, she was pretty good in Bird Box, but yeah. So we know Reborn is a thing. It's going to be happening. This is just the classic case of, Mark Miller writes something, it becomes a movie or / TV script because it's conveniently segmented into 6 issues, and everybody wins.
Well, with Millar's deal with Netflix, it was bound to happen.
Yep.
And that's part of the reason that Capullo went over and did this with him, because he knew that he would make a shitload of money.
It's so funny because I saw Greg Capullo on Batman Day in Schenectady. I talked about this, Schenectady, New York, near Albany. And this is before Reborn came out. And I think I asked him the question, what do you think you're going to be doing next? And he said, well, I got a potential thing I could do with Mark Miller. I might just do it because everything he writes turns into a TV show or movie, and I can make more money that way. And I was like, hey, man, you're actually right. And here he is. I mean, Capullo did the art, and he's definitely going to get some royalties from this show. So good on him.
I'm not taking away from the work either. That book was amazing.
No. Oh, no.
The art was fantastic.
Yeah, the art was amazing.
But yeah, I just hope that Sandra Bullock doesn't star in this, because I don't think she fits the lead character. Definitely
not. The lead character is younger than Sandra Bullock.
Not even that. I don't see Sandra Bullock as that character. I mean, yeah, actor, so changed character, but I just don't see her as that person.
I could see her playing the mom, or like either the mom or the older version that's like in the hospital,
Possibly.
Like the real world version.
But I hope it's done right, because this is a really great story. I really love this book.
Yeah. So. And with that being said, we're going to move on to our fantastic interview with Tom McWeeney, and we'll see you guys on the other side.
Hey guys, Chris here, interrupting the show real quick. Remember, if you want to show your support for Force Comic News, head on down to patreon.com/Force Comic News, where just $1 a month gets you access to our Slack channel, where we can talk comics all day and all night, and exclusive Patreon podcast that we're uploading very soon. A series of games that we play with all the great guests we have here on Force Comic News. You're going to get one of those every month, and just $1 a month gets it for you. So remember, that's the best way to show your support there and to help a growing community and to be a part of it with us. So everybody, thanks for your support, and on with the show.
And welcome back, everybody. I'd like to introduce a very special guest, the artist behind Atomic Frenchie, Mr. Tom McWeeney. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Hi, glad to be here.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for being on the show. Well, we're going to talk about Atomic Frenchie in a second, because it just looks absolutely crazy. So you're the artist for it, and what got you into wanting to do a comic? Have you always been a fan of comics?
Yeah, I mean, I am the little kid the kid who wanted to grow up to be a fireman. From the time I could hold a pencil, I wanted to draw, and I not only wanted to draw, I wanted to be a cartoonist, basically.
Mm-hmm.
My older brother draws, so when we were kids, I would watch him draw, and as a result, he was always buying Mad Magazine, and he would buy these Dennis the Menace sort of trade paperback books, and I loved them. I would just pore over them, and then one year, this woman across the street, her son was going away to college, and he was a comic collector, and she came over to my mother with a box of comics and said, you have 4 boys here, I'm sure they'll want these.
Mm-hmm.
And in this box was basically like 35 sort of early 60s DC comics, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with like what early DC comics were like, but it was, it was like Superman on a street corner, like holding a cup, begging for money, or Batman as an Indian chief, or fighting a giant gorilla. They were really, really silly, Mort Weisinger written books. And in this box, among all these comics, was one Marvel comic. It was a Tales to Astonish 86. And so I'm going through these books, and it was just so strikingly different to my, 6-year-old mind. And I crack it open, and there was a Hulk story in there. And I was just like, it was just nothing like anything I had seen before. The opening splash page was, Bruce Banner on a missile flying over Times Square, right? My dad worked in New York, so I was like, wait, this isn't, Gotham City. This isn't Metropolis. This is a real place, and it looked like John Buscema. It looked like a real city,
Wow.
And so I was just, it literally totally changed. I often think if that single book hadn't been in that box, would I have been sort of drawn into comics the way I was? I don't think I would have, because here was this this superhero who had no costume, he had no gadgets, he was just green, and his weapons were his fist and his rage, and it was like, as a kid, that just so appealed to me, especially as the youngest of 4 boys. That really appealed to me. Yeah. Because so that was where my love of comics are. But I was already I would read the comic strips in the newspaper. I would read anything that had any sort of fun drawings involved with it. But that was sort of my trip. And then within a year of getting that box of comics, a kid moved in across the street from me, who, again, sort of like the weird sort of perfect storm of things happening. And he was a massive comic head. And not only that, but he was, his parents kind of spoiled him. So I had to sort of nickel and dime and get whatever I could get. But whatever I didn't get, he would get. So I could go over to his house, and he had like complete runs of Spider-Man. And I had never seen Spider-Man before. And, he exposed me to Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four and Iron Man. He was also a big Marvel head too. I mean, he bought DC, but we were both sort of on the same page, and Marvel was doing the cooler stuff back in whatever this was, 72, 73. And that was it. And that was, we would sit there and sketch out of the comics. We would draw out of them. And, I wasn't looking back from that point on.
That I think it was probably the best origin and love for comics story that we've heard on here, because that was like, we've never gotten one so vivid of where it was like you knew the first splash page you opened to that like changed your life. And we always talk about the early Marvel characters, how much heart they had, and how relative it was to people in everyday life, because I mean, like Spider-Man swinging through New York City, he's in downtown Manhattan.
Absolutely.
It's a little more real.
Absolutely. And not only that, but it's, again, people who didn't see the 60s DC stuff. I had literally one in one hand and one in the other. I had gone through this box and looked through most of these books. So to have this one in there, and it was just one. There was no other Marvel books in that entire box. And to just sort of open it up, and they had this great Gene Colan cover of this, because it was Tales to Astonish, so the book was split between the Hulk story and the Submariner story. And the Submariner was like this wave washing over New York City, and it was just like, again, as opposed to, Batman painted like a zebra, it was like the contrast was just so like, and I was a fan of the Batman TV show, and I really loved the Superman TV show, the George Reeve one at that point. I was watching it every day. But then to see this character who wore nothing but ripped purple pants, it was people don't understand, like they're so used to the sort of the Hulk now, they have no sort of context of him appearing on scene with a bunch of like square-jawed, good-looking guys hanging around, with their capes, fighting goofy villains. And now all of a sudden it was something completely different. It totally appealed to me too. I was a big fan of like monster movies. So, watch all the Universal movies, and especially like anything with a giant monster. So the Hulk really, really fit into that sort of niche of my brain. I was like, wait a minute, he's kind of like a monster, but he's not. So I always say, people always say, what got you into comics? And I always say, the Hulk got me into comics, without question.
Awesome.
Without question.
That is awesome. And I mean, so where for you? When was your first moment of like, okay, now I'm drawing in the comic book industry? Like this is what I'm doing now.
Oh, you mean like my first sort of realization of like a professional moment?
Yeah. Like,
well, I went to the Kubert School after high school. I went there with my brother, who also I told you also draws.
Yep.
And I really loved it. A lot of some artists have gone there but I always say that I definitely would not have been a professional without those 3 years of training. And after I graduated, while I was there, actually my third year, they start sort of getting you ready to go out into the real world, get a portfolio together and whatnot. And I was always very realistic about my talent level. Some guys aren't. Like I meet artists and they'll show me stuff, the portfolio reviews at cons and stuff, and you can get that vibe of like, this guy really doesn't quite get how far he has still to go. Or I've seen the other case too, where guys have shown me work and I'm like, dude, take this to an editor now and go get some work.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready. So you get. But I think I've always been very realistic. So in third year at the Kubert School, there was another guy in my class, this guy Rich Hedden, and Rich was a really good. Like he was just a fountain of ideas. Rich could write and plot far better than I could. So I said let's kind of pool our talents and we'll get a better chance of getting work. So we did. We started working on some ideas together, and again, people don't realize how different things were in 1986. We graduated the school. That summer, we went up to a con in New York, and this was in the days where you could literally walk up to a table, find the editor of some book you knew, and put your work right in front of them right then and there. You didn't have to wait on any lines. There was no schedule. And so that's what we did. There could be no better time to have been coming out of the Kubert School than 1986. Because it was the summer of Watchmen, the summer of Dark Knight.
Yeah.
And not only that, but 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hit. So the black and white boom was underway. And so there were these little comic companies willing to take a chance on anybody who had any kind of a decent idea. And we understood we were not going to work for Marvel, we were not going to work for DC. So that's what we did. We pitched an idea to this comic company in California called Blackthorn, called Roachmill. He liked it, and we did it for them for a year. And after not getting paid and fighting with them over money and everything, I said, look, we're going to take this somewhere else. And so we moved it over to Dark Horse, and that was a much better fit. The people at Dark Horse were great, and we did it there for a while. And so that was probably it. We're working on the cover of Roachmill #1 would probably be the moment where I had that, like, oh my God, I'm actually probably maybe going to get published,
So awesome.
Yeah, it was a great time. People, again, it's such a different situation now. Like, I feel kind of a little bit bad for, young artists these days. It's much harder. It was such a small industry back in the mid '80s. It really was, and it was an intimacy about it. Like I remember the first time I ever met John Romita Jr. He was just sitting at a table.
Yeah.
And I just walked over to him and said, hey, a big fan, shook his hands, like, would you look at my work? I was like, sure, bring it around, show me your work. It was that easy.
Wow, that is so awesome.
Yeah, Tom DeFalco, same thing. He was the editor-in-chief at Marvel Comics, and he came down to this little podunk comic store by where I lived and did a signing for whatever book he was working on at the time, and also reviewed portfolios. And I'm sitting there going, that would never happen today.
No way. Nope.
So I feel lucky in that regard, in that it was much easier to get people to just look at your work and talk to you and interact with them.
So fast forwarding a bit, at what point do you end up working at Image Comics?
So I worked at Dark Horse. We worked at Dark Horse for about 4 years. Weren't really making a lot of money. Book wasn't really selling that well. I was doing okay. And we picked up some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle work through a friend of mine, also a Kubert School colleague, And suddenly, for the first time, we actually made some decent money. And it really, again, really sort of eye-opening. It's like you can make a living at this. The Turtles were paying, really good rates. Every issue made royalties. And so after we did some Turtle work, we were looking for sort of our next gig. And I was at a comic convention in New York and was talking to, I believe it was Evan Dorkin of all people. And he said to me, I told him I was, looking for work. We're deciding what we're going to do next. And he said to me, you should call up DC. They're looking for people to work on Lobo, right? So this was when DC finally realized that they had a hot character in Lobo after the character had been red hot for 2 years.
Right.
And, just dragging their feet. Marvel would have had Lobo in his own book in 2 weeks after he got hot. But, DC, it's like this slow-moving ship.
Yep.
So finally they realized, hey, we should probably give Lobo his own book, and they were looking for people to work on it. And so we contacted DC, and as it turned out, they weren't interested in us working on Lobo, but they had an opening on the Demon. So we worked on the Demon for a year.
Nice.
Was rough. It was rough. It was rough on Rich, my partner. It was a little bit more than he could bear. And eventually, after the Demon was up, my editor said, look, we're interested in you inking, but we're not interested in your friend penciling. So I inked a few books for about 6 months. And my editor on the book, I inked a book called Damage. And my editor on that book was a guy named Bill Kaplan. And Bill, one day I'm just sitting there inking some pages, and Bill calls me up, and he says to me, they're going to offer you a contract probably in the next week or two. Don't sign it. And I was like, okay. And he said, I've been in negotiations with Jim Lee to be editor-in-chief of Wildstorm, and I want you to be working there. I don't want you to be working for DC.
Awesome.
So, but
so cool.
It sounds cool, but at the same time, it's like I was nervous because it's like, getting offered a contract at DC is still a pretty cool thing too, right?
Yeah.
It's like so I just said, look, I said to myself, look, if they offer the contract, I'm just gonna stall, right? Like, so if they call me up and say, hey, we want to give you a contract, I'm gonna go, oh, sure, great. And then when it arrives in the mail, I'm just not gonna send it back until I hear from Bill. So long story short, Bill does get the editor-in-chief job, and then he has me and my wife fly out to San Diego basically to woo us. And that took all of 10 minutes because San Diego is beautiful.
Yeah.
And, and the studio was kind of half built at the time. And even then you could sort of see the promise of it. And so I wound up, what's interesting though. So I go out there for this sort of wooing thing. And then the very last night I was supposed to sit down with Bill and Jim Lee and go, sure, Mr. Lee, this is great. I really want to work here at Wildstorm. I mean, everything's, So, but I was a little older than most of the people he was luring out there. He was luring out like 19, 20, 21. I was 27. Mm-hmm. My wife and I had just moved into an apartment together, planning on getting married. So I was still kind of on the fence about whether to actually go the 3,000 miles to California and work in the studio. So after kind of, I always say I was probably the only person that turned Jim down with his initial offer, and it wasn't because I wanted more money. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like the timing wasn't quite right. So about 6 months later, they contacted me again and went, "We really want you out here. So what can we do?" And they paid for most of my move. They paid for
awesome.
So
wow, that's so cool.
Wildstorm. I had but the real story though is when I was out there for that initial visit and they didn't tell me this, was that it was also a tryout, right? So I go out there, and I'm thinking, all right, I get there and they do. Then I finally get out there and they tell me there's going to be a tryout, right? I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'm walking around the studio and I'm looking at Scott Clark's pencils and I'm looking at Jeff Campbell's pencils. I'm like, all right, these are fine. I can do any of these. And then they go, come here, here's what you're going to ink. And they dropped this 8-page Travis Charest story on me. And I don't know if you've ever seen Travis's pencils, especially around that time period.
No.
But they were gorgeous. I had never seen anything remotely like that. Wow. And as a matter of fact, the guy who handed them to me, the editor ran them and he said, yeah, if we could figure out a way to just reproduce these, we would. But you're going to have to ink them. And so it was really a sort of like throw me in at the deep end,
right?
I think, and I had just started. No exaggeration. I had just started inking with a nib, which was a pen tip versus a brush. I was a brush inker for a long time.
Yep.
And I had just started probably about 2 months before getting this job dropped on me. And I'm not going to say it didn't scare the bejesus out of me, because it did. But I just sort of took a deep breath and I said, you know what? I'm just going to work on these pages as slow as I can until I feel like I start to understand them. And that's what I did. I just picked a spot about the size of a postcard, and I said, I'm just going to ink that part as best I can. And once I did, I was like, all right, I think but it was really trial by fire. Even after I was done inking the story, they were joking about how nobody else in the studio wanted to take those pages, including Scott Williams. And so, it was a very, very sort of like gut-wrenching kind of moment.
So, as an inker of these stories, how much are you involved in the actual story itself, and like talking with the writer, or artist, or any of the other team?
Not at all. And what, and it also, inking varies from pencil to pencil. Like, when I inked those Travis pages, Kevin Smith made the joke in the movie about being a tracer. I did literally trace them.
Yep.
But there was no shame in that in me. The pencils were gorgeous. My complete philosophy going into those pages was don't screw them up, right? And there were plenty of guys I've inked that are like that. Jeff Campbell's pencils were super tight. Like he just wanted to make his pencils mistake proof, and that's fine. But that made them really unfun to ink. No, it did.
Yeah.
I loved Campbell's work. I really did. He was one of my favorite artists at Wildstorm. I liked him as a person. We had a lot in common. We were the only two guys at the studio that actually liked sort of animated cartoons. And he was a big Mort Drucker fan from Mad Magazine. We would talk about. We had a lot of stuff like that we would talk about. But I did not enjoy inking his pencils. As a matter of fact, there are very few guys whose pencils I really loved inking. The one guy who I really loved inking was Joe Madeira. And it was because Joe didn't pencil like Campbell and Travis. They were tight, but they were not carved in stone. There was always a little room. There was always this sort of like nice, semi-loose quality to the way he put pencil down that I said, you know what? This is what I want to be inking, because it's not, I'm not basically a slave to the pencils at that point. But at the same time, there was a sort of quality of them that I did everything possible to try to maintain.
That's an interesting look at it. Just thinking that, if the sharper the lines and stuff like that you don't get so much room to play with and do your artistic approach to it too, right? I mean, you get less room to make it your own.
I'm not gonna lie too. I never really tried. I wasn't one of these inkers that always tried to put my stamp on everything. I really wasn't. When I was at DC, here's a funny story, or not a funny story, interesting story. DC, the rule of thumb in their early 90s was that DC was 2 years behind Marvel. And it was true. They always were about 2 years. I mean, I had an editor at DC himself tell me that exact phrase, that they were always about 2 years behind Marvel. So Marvel has that period where, Jim Lee's working for them, and Eric Larson and Mark Silvestri, and the whole Image, the pre-Image group of guys. And now DC is playing catch-up with those guys. So they all leave and they form Image. And I get my first sort of inking work off outside, the Demon ends and I go on to my first gig. And the editor hands me these pages, and the first thing he says to me is, can you make them look like the Image guys, right? So I was like, I could try, and I'm, it's my first big job for DC. But in hindsight, I felt really bad for those jobs because I kind of ran roughshod over some of these pencils. I did stuff that I would never have done 5 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I would have just said to the guy, look, if you want this to make it look like Image, have the penciler make it look like Image, because I'm not gonna. But I did, simply because that's what the editor, demanded of me. And now that was a real sort of extreme case, but I put a lot of stuff into those pages, more so than I would ever have done later on. But inking is a mechanical task. I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't take some drawing skill, because it does, but I always looked at it as just a step in production. I really did. And I know a lot of inkers get really mad when they hear people say that, but it put it this way. I could talk on the phone and ink at the same time. I couldn't do that when I was penciling. When I was drawing, you can't do that. You can click off your brain when you're inking, and just let the hand go, and it will look exactly the same as if I sat there. I could show you pages that I inked, and you'd never know that I was holding down a conversation while I was inking them, because it becomes a sort of like a muscle reflex. Scott Williams used to use the term muscle memory all the time, and it's true. And so I could, but you can't do that when you're drawing something. You have to think about it. You have to think about like the pose and the camera angle and everything and the light, whatever. So, inking was something I did to work in comics, but it was never something that I loved, except for Battle Chasers. Like I said, Battle Chasers was, every time I got a page from Joe, I'd look at it and go, man, this is going to be,
that's awesome.
This is going to be great. And, so that was fun.
So let's talk Atomic Frenchie.
Sure.
Yeah. So do you want to give us the quick plot synopsis, and how the project got started or something?
Well, the
like
project
that?
got started via Facebook, actually.
Okay.
Tom Smigoski, who's the writer, very talented writer, he contacted me. He saw a piece of artwork that I posted. I had done a sort of goofy take on Lockjaw from the Fantastic Four.
Yep.
And so he reached out to me, and he said, I have this idea for a book, would you be interested? His timing couldn't have been better. I was in a little bit of a dry spell. I was actually doing a lot of toy design at that time for like Mattel and Fisher-Price, and that kind of comes and goes. So he caught me at a good time. So he sends me the proposal, and I read it, and I tell him this all the time, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. And I know I'm like, I shouldn't be saying this because this is my book, but bear with me.
Yep.
He sent it to me like on a Thursday, but I'm always one of those people that like do not respond right away. Read something a second or third time, think about it, mull it over. And what drew me is on the second reading of the proposal was in the back of the proposal, he had the storylines that he wanted for book 2 and 3 in those in the proposal, and in those plot outlines, he had introduced these new characters, and those were interesting to me. The secondary characters became interesting to me. So I just sent them a quick email, and I said to him, I'm somewhat interested, but I asked him 2 simple questions. I said, one, are you just looking for somebody to draw whatever you write down and follow you sort of verbatim? Or are you looking for a collaborator? And he wrote, no, I'm looking for somebody to sort of collaborate with. And I said, great, because I have a lot of ideas for this. And then I asked him how he saw the entire series ending. I said, in a dream world, if you get to do the entire Atomic Frenchie story, beginning to end, how do you see, what do you see as the ending? And I had a very clear idea of how it should end in my mind. And Tom wrote sort of almost exactly what I was thinking. So I was like, okay,
so cool.
On the same page. So so Tom has been incredibly generous with my input on this thing. It really is. A lot of the ideas are a combination of things where like Tom will write something and I'll just say, that's great, but wouldn't it be better? Or let's push it like this. Or, I introduce a lot of the sort of supporting characters in book 1. So it's been a very collaborative back and forth on this whole thing. And as a matter of fact, with book 2, which comes out in May, Tom really let me go because I had a very clear idea of what book 2 should be like. So he was very, very generous. I said, can I take the first stab at the outline on this first, as opposed to him sending me an outline, us kind of going back and forth on it. And but the whole premise is it's based on Tom's actual real dog.
Oh, that's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes, which when I read the proposal again, that's funny. When I read the proposal and he said it was based on his real dog, my first thought was, oh, this is just a guy's vanity project. You know, this is like, oh, I love my dog, and I'm going to make a comic about him.
Right.
Everyone else will love it too because it's my dog. You know,
it's my dog. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I thought, oh my god, I'm getting wrapped up in this guy's vanity project. This is going to be terrible. But no. So it's he just said, he goes, I have a French bulldog, and I don't know if you've ever been near one, but they are just the biggest jerks on the planet. So the idea was to do basically a story about a French bulldog that is the word we always used to describe him is he's essentially Lex Luthor. He's a dog that he feels it's his birthright to take over the world. It's not that he just wants to. He just feels that it's his destiny to take over the world.
That's awesome.
Yes, and we have ideas for up to 6 books at this point. We've done the first 2. We're waiting to get book 3 at this point.
Tom, 1 second. You got to fix your mic really quick.
Yep, sure. Is that better?
Yep. Thanks.
So yeah. So the book is this sort of Kirby's Rise to Power. That's the name of the dog, Kirby.
Awesome.
And that's actually Tom's dog. So
very cool. And the first volume is available on Amazon, right?
Yes, it's called Atomic Frenchie Sit, Stay, Rule. It's all ages book. As a matter of fact, we've gotten just as much good response and things from adults who have read it versus, kids, their nieces and their nephews, and whoever they bought it for. The response has been actually very good so far. And,
cool. That's awesome.
And if people like book 1, if they like it book 1, they're going to love book 2 because it's just really sort of not. Well, now that all the sort of groundwork has been laid, we just jump right in with book 2.
That's awesome.
Are you guys self-publishing this, or is this going through a publisher?
No, it's going through Insight Comics. Insight, who does, they're mostly known for all their sort of big coffee table books. Their Art of Harry Potter kind of things. Well, 2 years ago, they decided to sort of, they decided that they needed sort of a property style or things to invest in, and so they started a comic line and a young readers line, and our book kind of falls right on the cusp of both.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of in between.
Yeah, it's a novel that has comic sections in it versus it's not a full graphic novel. I always tell people that when they ask about it, it's not a full. That was Tom's idea when he approached me with it. He said, "Look, I want to do something a little different." He goes, "You're a comic book artist. I write novels. I want to do something in between," and that appealed to me on a lot of levels. The main one being was that then I didn't have to draw 125 pages of the novel. Because that never happened.
That helps.
I'd still be working on book 1 if that was the case. I figured we divided into about, the first book has about roughly, I think it's about 43 pages of comic in it, and then of course I think 15 or so spot illustrations. Mm-hmm. The second book, which is a little longer, has like 52 pages of comic and I think 12 spot illustrations. So, but I think it's like 30 pages longer, book 2 or something like that. So, wow. But yeah, I liked that idea. I liked, the idea of just Tom's thinking was, and I totally agreed with this, which was, he goes, sometimes you're reading a book and you come across a scene and you just look at it and go, this scene should be drawn. It should be, it should be comic pages, not, he goes, as a writer, he goes, I understand that sometimes I have to sort of describe it. He goes, but it would be so much cooler to just have it drawn. And in book one, it was much more clear cut. Like we knew pretty much right away, okay, this is going to be a comic section, this is going to be a comic section. And then I would add stuff in. Like I'd go like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if, when we do this flashback scene, if we just draw it and we do it like an old videotape, like an old videotape that somebody, oh yeah, that's great. So we would sort of play with that. Book 2 was much harder to determine like what comic book sections, because the story is, it's a road trip story, and it's very much almost like it's a mad world. Like it just starts and it just goes. Huh. Like I could have literally picked any scene after like page 20 and drawn it, and it would have been good.
Awesome. Yeah.
So it was like, all right, I gotta pick what to draw here. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
So Volume 2, you said, is out in springtime?
May 7th, I believe, is the date.
So,
Awesome.
will it be in this upcoming previews?
It very well might. Insight doesn't really keep us privy to that stuff unless we ask about it, and we're just,
Okay.
we Tom usually asks sometime, so I may find out this week if it is or not.
Cool.
But yeah, so, and again, we're hoping for a book 3, and see what happens.
Well, Tom, for anyone out there who hasn't heard of you or Atomic Frenchie, what's the best place for them to pick up Atomic Frenchie, and what's the best place to follow you along this journey?
Well, the best place to pick it up would be either Barnes & Noble or Amazon. Those two. You can order it through Insight's web, their webpage. They carry it, or if you're at a comic convention and Insight has a booth. They were at the New York Comic Con. They had plenty of Atomic Frenchies there. You can follow me on Facebook or on Instagram, both of them under my name, Tom McWeeney. I don't do Twitter yet, but I'm thinking about it. I have another proposal out right now.
Yeah.
My agent that I can't really talk about that I'm really excited about, and I think if that gets picked up by somebody, I think, I probably should venture into Twitter, the Twitterverse.
Well, we'll definitely have you back on the show if that's the case too.
Yeah, I think
you can't lead us on like that and not expect us.
No, not only do I have that being shopped, but I'm actually, this one I can't talk about because it's not in front of anybody yet. But I'm actually working on it's a bit of a Hail Mary pass with what we were talking about earlier with trying to get work through major comic companies these days. But I'm actually working on a pitch to bring back Gen 13 as a sort of young readers book.
Wow.
I know DC now has a young readers line.
Yeah.
And again, huge sort of Hail Mary pass. But I figured it's worth a shot. I love those characters. They were my favorite characters while working at Wild Stone. I always thought that was their best book. And so I thought, this would be the time to kind of bring them back in, almost like in sort of like a Teen Titans Go kind of thing. Maybe not quite that goofy, but in that sort of vein. And so I'm working on a pitch for that right now that I'm hoping to get in front of the right people at DC. Fingers crossed.
That's awesome. Good luck with that.
You never know.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, thanks for being on. We got to have you on again because I think we only hit about a quarter of your career. And
yeah, that'd be great.
And I gladly talk about other things besides my career. I'll just nerd out with anybody.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we're definitely having you back on.
Very cool.
So yeah, thanks again, man. And
no, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we're back.
Hey, wow. Man, so many great stories. Cannot wait to have this guy back on the show, that's for sure.
Yeah, the passion and the discussion or the way he talks was just so fantastic.
Yeah.
He needs to get out there more and talk.
He should have a podcast because it just naturally comes to him,
I want more competition.
Never mind. All right, so now we're just going to get right into the comic boy
howdy, is there some comic book news?
Yeah, there's quite a bit. This is actually pretty interesting. Xena, the Warrior Princess, is coming in April to Dynamite, which this is actually pretty cool. I might even try the first issue of this. I used to watch that show growing up. That and Hercules, man. Those are like back to back. The Tales of Hercules.
I used to watch Hercules. I'm not gonna lie, because my dad used to watch it.
Yeah.
Xena as well. I have no interest in this book though. I'm glad it's being made because somebody like those shows live way beyond the airing of the actual shows. It's amazing.
Yeah.
How simple a premise can do that. So I'm glad somebody's gonna enjoy this.
Yeah. The fact that they're still being talked about today is like you don't see that TV. Like they don't take a chance like that on TV. You just won't. They're not just like, hey, we got a show coming to CBS about, a warrior woman who wears leather and she's going to kick ass at 8 o'clock on Tuesday nights. It's like, everything's a sitcom.
So how long until that version of Hercules comes to comics? What's the over on?
Oh man, if they haven't done it already, I want to say it's already been done before, but if not, I would say, I don't know, a few months after this releases, so probably summertime.
Yeah, I was gonna give it about 6 months.
Yeah, but hey, there's a reason this book got made. There's a fan base for everything, and I might actually pick this up just for. I just want to know, like, where has she been? You know, Ahoy Comics.
Been up to?
Ahoy Comics is doing a book called Bronze Age Boogie, announced by Stuart Moore and Alberto Ponticelli. Planet of the Nerds sounds like a fun book by Paul Constant and Alan Robinson. I might actually check that one out. Hashtag Danger by Tom Pear and Chris Giarusso. Man, giving me all the tough names today. Did Tom talk about that on the show? I can't remember. No, this is one of his new things he's got coming out. It might just be me, but I don't know if I read books with hashtag in the title. But that might just be a personal preference. We get a Steel Cage one-shot with stories from Mark Waid, Lana Suvani, Tom Pear, Alan Robinson, Stuart Moore, Peter Gross. Little combination one-shot there. Bunch of different stories.
Yeah, so
Mark Waid doing some stuff over there at Ahoy.
Bronze Age Boogie didn't really appeal to me that much. But Planet of the Nerds I want to pick up because it's solicited as a Revenge of the Nerds style story.
Yep. Sold.
So I'm down.
Sold.
And then the other two I wasn't too hot on, but picking up Mark Waid to write a story, even if it's just one story in a collection,
right,
is a big deal. I mean, this is Ahoy's kind of second season of books, and I think they got some winners in here again. So, congrats to them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. They picked him up for it. So we got some Marvel stuff. The Star Wars Galaxy's Edge announced to come in April by Ethan Sachs and Will Sliney. It's based on the new park at Disneyland. So is the park going to be based off the story, or are they writing a story about a theme park is my question.
So the park is based on a section of the Star Wars universe, which I'm going to look up as I vamp.
Okay.
And it is the story is going to be basically kind of discussing that as we go along. So yeah, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, upcoming Star Wars theme area being developed in Disneyland Park at California. So this is basically they're making Galaxy's Edge like a section of the Star Wars galaxy.
Huh.
And this book is going to explain kind of the lore of that section. So as a Star Wars sucker, I will buy this book. But it is really funny that it's a book it's a theme park based on a movie, and the book is based on a theme park. So it's a comic book based on a theme park based on a movie.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure Disney knows what they're doing. They're probably going to make money off of it either way. Yeah, there's probably a big arrow going to like a money sign. Boom Comics, Rocco's Modern Afterlife, coming in April. That's pretty cool. By Anthony Birch and Mattia De Mio.
I'm super excited for this.
Rocco versus zombies. Come on. Who doesn't want to see that?
Combine two things I love so much.
Zombies and Rocco's Modern Life. Yeah.
I'm so down for this.
I mean, come on. Bendis teases a future DC event called Leviathan. And we already got to, we saw the villain behind it, Leviathan, in Action Comics, right?
So Leviathan popped up in Action Comics, and do we know where Leviathan originally came from?
No. Metropolis, you mean? In the
Batman Incorporated was the first time we saw that.
Oh, okay. You mean the Grant Morrison run?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
So I said it, I think, late last year, where I said I think Bendis is ramping up to something big in terms of a DC event, and here it is.
Yeah.
Leviathan. I think that all this Superman stuff's going to culminate into a DC or in a DC wide event book. So I'm super excited.
Yeah. We got a little glimpse of that, of how like Leviathan's been living under Metropolis for centuries.
Yeah, Corvallis-esque.
Yeah. I wonder if it's going to lead to, like, there's been societies living underground everywhere.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Cool. So I had quite a few books to read. I was actually really excited for this week. I had some cool books. I read a new book, read some old books, read some new books. Let me talk about the new one that I read this week. It is a Image book called Oliver.
Ooh. Oh, I didn't pick that up.
You didn't pick it up?
I forgot about that. It was in my top 5 too.
I actually read it because I knew you were going to read it. I remember when we talked about this. It's interesting. The art's really good. I'm just trying to find the writer's Gary Whitta, but the art is Derek Robertson, and I mean it's the story of Oliver Twist, but like it's not. I mean that so far. I mean his name is the same, and I'm sure there's going to be like the same overall plot style, but it's just a great first issue. Post-apocalyptic world. Basically, the world has been fighting with soldiers that they've been growing, almost like clones, so they all look the same. But they're trained to fight. They're resistant to gases and everything. So basically, all this fighting is happening with these clones. The world gets nuked, and the only people that are left that can breathe the air because of the nukes and everything are these super soldiers that are just left over, and there's nobody to fight anymore. That intertwined with a plot of this boy Oliver who shows up. Don't want to give too much away, but it's a really solid first issue. The art is really good. You get a really cool story and some plot development, and I highly recommend this Image book.
I'm going to pick that up tonight. I'm a huge Gary Whitta fan, so
yeah, it's really good. Okay, so I read Batman 63. I'm still not loving this this whole dream sequence stuff they're doing. It's just really exhausting to read all this dialogue and then to find out that it's just a dream sequence. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's all kind of silly to me when writers do this whole thing, and to see Tom King doing it, it's just like, I feel like he's just biding his time. Like, he announced that he's doing 100 Batman issues, and honestly, these last few issues I've just felt like filler. Like, oh shit, I shouldn't have announced. I shouldn't have said this.
Well, that, and there's like a crossover coming up where he's not going to be a part of the book anymore.
Right, exactly.
Until the crossover's over, obviously, but yeah, so.
Yeah, and I mean, it's mostly Constantine following Batman around, like, in his head, and Batman realizing that he's going through some type of torture. He's being tortured in a nightmare. And Constantine is telling him all this, that, like, you know, he's being fed scarecrow gas and all this stuff, but we've yet to see anything happening in the real world, I think, with the last 2 issues. Freedom.
I said it once, I said it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Any good writer can make something great, but that plot device is one of the lamest plot devices.
Right. Yeah. Like,
it's all a dream.
Yeah. Like,
it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I will tell you what does work for me. Freedom Fighters number 2, man. Let's talk about Freedom Fighters. So, holy shit, this book. First off, the art, man. The art is so good in this book that, I mean, you get to see the human bomb punch a giant robot with a Nazi symbol on its chest, and like, dude, this is book of the year right now. I'm just telling you. I am in love with Freedom Fighters.
The Human Bond is one of the most underrated and underused characters in the DC. Like, I love that character. This book was fantastic.
Dude, we gotta get Venditti back on the show, because I just want to, like, I just want to bow to the man and say this book, so good. It's a little different than his run with Green Lantern. His Green Lantern, he was building the story. This one, he's like, I'm taking these characters and we're starting off with a bang. I'm rebooting everything. Like, these are new heroes. This is my town.
Yeah, and just the heroes in this, they brought back hope to the Americans.
Yeah.
And one of the Plastic Men was like, I don't want to give it too much away, but he was hidden somewhere, and his moment in the book is so great because he just comes out and it's just Plastic Man is one of the silliest and stupidest, and I mean in the best way possible, characters in DC. And they made me like afraid of Plastic Man.
Really cool. I mean, you got to read the book, but there's a really, really disturbing scene at the end of it where one of the Plastic Men is on the streets trying to observe how much the new freedom fighters have influenced the America into trying to rebel, and he transforms from being a little kid and starts and like snaps a guy's neck, and it's just really disturbing because he's like elongated the guy's neck and he's like wrapped around him like it. Plastic Man is scary, and the suit they gave him is terrifying as well. I can't get over this book, man. I'm so excited that this book was on my pull list this week, and I completely forgot about it.
I'm so happy. I was looking forward to this so much because when Freedom Fighters popped up in Multiversity, I fell in love immediately, and I went back and read like all of the old Freedom Fighter stuff, and just none of it scratched the itch I wanted because all of it was like the Freedom Fighters come to DC Prime.
Yeah, right.
No. The Freedom Fighters need to stay in Earth X, and they need to fight Nazi versions of things. Like that's what the Freedom Fighters are to me, at least. And this book has given it to me, and I fucking love it. So
good. Yeah, Shazam #2. What a week for comics. Shazam #2. They don't touch on any of the stuff with the guy who shows up and says that he's Billy Batson's dad. They don't do anything with that. But they go to the fun land that the kids that are all still they're in the train station from the first issue. They find where Billy they find the pillars of all the gods where Billy got his powers. They end up at this amusement park where all these children are, and Billy Batson gets greeted by King Kid, ruler of the Funlands. He said he's the missing 7th champion of the family too. So, man, Jeff Johns, he's getting ready to build a universe here. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, and the B plot with Dr. Sivana.
Yeah, and
him having like the little earthworm in his ear and just the creepiness of it.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, so Dr. Sivana is he's doing something with magic. He's getting involved in magic, and he has Maxervimus Mind. He has Mr. Mind, who is a tiny worm in his ear. Like, it's really disturbing. And Mr. Mime, like, I can't even look at it. I'm looking at the picture right now. It's friggin' creepy, dude. Like, the eyes on this worm thing, and he's just like hiding in Savannah's ear and like giving him instructions on like the mysteries of magic. And it was like almost comical at first, and then I'm like, this is really creepy.
Yeah, when you first see him, you almost laugh.
Yeah,
it's just like, this is stupid. What is this thing?
And
it gives you this. You opened a double-page spread.
Yeah,
the description of who he is, and oh god, it was so fantastic.
Yeah, he's like a little worm, but he's like the biggest threat in the magical universe or something like that. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, so Jeff Johns, I mean, dude, we knew this book was going to be epic, and I'm loving it so far.
This is good Jeff Johns right here.
The art alone, too. The art is just, man, every page is just done so well. There's a lot of cool splash pages with like the train and when they first discover Funland. It's just, man, Marco Santucci is killing it as well. So great book. I highly recommend it. And then we have Justice League 16, which all I can say is thank God we're done with that Hawk Thanagar Prime stuff. So if we skip to the last couple of pages like Chris and I have been doing in the Justice League story, we actually get to the plot we care about with Starman. I mean, there's a little more plot development. I'm even more confused now because of the whole John's being captured as a child, and and something was taken from him with his mind powers, and essentially Starman shows up at the end. He kind of fixes everything. Thanagar Prime goes back to being the shithole that it was, especially in the DC universe. Like, just don't even touch the Hawk characters at all. Just leave them, please. Like, they couldn't have made it even more confusing. Like, I think I can see what Scott Snyder was trying to do here. When Starman shows up, we have two Hawk girls standing next to each other. We have Shayera and we have Kendra. And like, Starman does something. He like takes something from Shayera and gives it to Kendra, and like Shayera was like, "Oh, so you just gave her my soul?" And he's like, "No, but you have your own soul now." And I'm like, "Oh God, this Hawk person stuff has just got to stop." It's like, anyways, it's not a bad book, that's for sure. Though, I mean, Starman shows up. He talks about how they're going to fix the source wall, and that's the plot we actually care about.
Yeah, it's still a really good book, but I've just been kind of gliding until we get to the next storyline, because the next storyline with like the fifth dimension,
right?
I really want.
They want to save the multiverse. I actually read another book this week, but I left it for Chris to talk about. Guardians of the Galaxy #1.
Oh fuck yeah!
So I know you wanted to. I know you read that. I know you want to talk about it. I read it too. Before you talk about it, what a great way to just boom, first issue. This is the new, like, I remember we both questioned, like, how are these people going to become part of the Guardians of the Galaxy? Like, how is this going to happen? And dude, Donny Cates pulled it off. He rebooted the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's got his weird and random team together. And I'll let Chris talk about the rest.
Yeah, so they basically are, all these characters are gathered together for the last will and testament of Thanos.
Yep.
And he informs them that I'm not really dead. I've been able to upload my consciousness into another being, and I'm not going to tell you who it is. So now they're like, everybody's scrambling and going like, who is it? And of course, Gamora is the first one to come up. Like, we think it's her, and that's who we should go after.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all because of what happened in Infinity Wars and her getting all the Infinity Stones and all the stuff that happened there. But the big part is certain characters get lost in this vortex and end up meeting up with Peter Quill, who Peter Quill and Groot have been in their own ship kind of doing their thing, trying to go figure something out when they run into these characters, and the Nova Corps appears. It's so much great nerdy Marvel cosmic stuff, and I fucking love it.
Yeah.
And basically the new team we get is Beta Ray Bill, Cosmic Ghost Rider, Moondragon. Who was the other one?
Well, Groot is still there. Groot can talk now, though. That was never addressed for me. Is that just a thing he does now? Like, he can speak?
So, yeah, I'll address that in a second. Let me get to the team. Yeah, and then I forget the other woman's name, and then Peter Quill. And, like, they just appear, and Peter's just like, oh, yeah, this is my new crew.
Yeah.
And that's how they make it.
Yep.
So, the Groot, there's two things here. Groot has, like, kind of a new look, and he basically looks like a 80s punk rocker.
Yep.
Which I love, since I grew up on 80s punk
rock.
Yep. And, he can talk because of something that happened during Infinity War.
Oh, okay.
So the gardener appeared and basically healed Groot. And when he healed him, Groot was able to talk. And we didn't find out that Groot's an asshole.
Yeah, he really is.
Like he's always, when he's talking, he's slamming everybody. So when you hear Rocket's responses in the past, like, it makes Rocket seem much more likable.
It does. It really does.
Because you think Rocket's being a dick, but it's because Groot is being a dick. And then we end up finding out that basically the whole plot is because of another cosmic character who I won't spoil. And they're going to try to resurrect Thanos.
It's awesome.
You couldn't have done a better job rebooting one of the top teams at Marvel. And, everybody loves the Guardians and what they've become since the movies. And I immediately love this team and love this book. Donnie's got another hit in his hands, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It's so... Pick this book up. It's going to be a book we're going to be talking about at the end of the year, I promise you.
Easily. But that's all I had for this week.
And then I just have one more, and I actually picked up Naomi.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
By Bendis.
Yep.
So this was teased as like a big mystery in the DC universe, and basically what happens is Superman and Mongol end up fighting and running into the town where this young girl lives, and she's running around trying to figure out why it happened here, and making connections to another time when the superheroes came to town and wondering if there's some sort of connection with it. Long story short, we end up finding out that this girl was orphaned, and the day she was actually adopted and brought to the town was the day that the other heroes came. So there's some, obviously there's some,
yeah,
and a link to how Superman came to be about. So I'm intrigued enough where I might pick up the next issue, but it's definitely, it's told from the perspective of like a 16-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
So going with that in mind, because there's a lot of high school-ish, drama-ish conversations, and it can be tough, but the mystery alone is enough to get you through, I think.
Awesome.
So, Mike, this is a long show.
Long episode.
Awesome
yeah, long, great show. Great content for all our adoring fans.
Yes. So if people wanted to continue on and follow you on the internet, where's the best place for them?
If they're not sick of us by now, Fortress Ricker on Twitter. Where can they find you, Chris?
Well, you can find me at Fortress Chris on Twitter, or you can find the show at SCN_official, or just go to FortressComicNews.com, where everything we do is posted right there for your viewing and listening pleasure. So once again, I appreciate you all for listening. Remember, reviews on iTunes, thumbs up, subscribes on YouTubes, and all that fun stuff. And we'll see you all next week.
See ya.